everyone, my name is Billy and you're listening to Humans of Authenticity, the CEO Special Edition. Our guest today is Joanna Pineda, the CEO at Matrix Group. I do want to take a moment to congratulate Joanna and Matrix Group for their 25th years anniversary. I know it is a big milestone. She is a multi-award winner, and in March this year, she received the Association Women Technology Champions Badass Awards. What an amazing achievement, honoring leaders who have found companies and defined their position in the industry. I'm so excited to introduce you to Joanna in this episode. Welcome to Humans of Authenticity, Joanna.
V, it is my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. How do I introduce myself? There's so many different ways. I define myself, like if you think about it, right? You're a daughter, a sister, a mom, a wife, a CEO, a friend, a storyteller, a martial artist.
Martial artist.
So many different ways. I was born in the Philippines, lived there until I was 6, moved to Guam, lived on Guam for 3 years. Very few people know this. Moved back to the Philippines, and then when I was 14, came to the United States. Finished high school in the States, went to college on the West Coast, came out here to the East Coast for grad school, started working for a bulletin board company, and did that for many years until the company discovered the web. And that's when my career and my love and my interest of the web started. And V, that was in 1994.
Wow,
A
okay.
long time ago. I think in 93, we were playing with open source web browsers and using dial-up to access the internet. It was really interesting. And then in 1999, I started Matrix Group. And so, 25 years going into 26 later this year. So very exciting. The company works almost exclusively with associations and nonprofits. And V, over the years, we've really changed how we define the company. We used to say that we're a web development company, but we don't say that anymore because we do so much more than web dev. I mean, we do custom software, we do integrations, we do backend stuff, but everything is in service of helping these associations thrive in the digital space. Sometimes the work that we do might just be helping them to figure out their strategy, and there's no web development, for example, but it's all about how do you increase membership, how do you increase membership revenue, how do you increase engagement, and how do you kind of succeed as an association, especially given all these chaotic things that we seem to keep running into. I mean, right now it's all the chaos in the political landscape. And then prior to that, gosh, we had the pandemic. And then prior to that, we had the '08 recession. I mean, it's like we can't catch a break. There's always something chaotic in the landscape, but we've got to adapt.
Let's go back to your time in the very beginning of the internet and computer. I remember in the early 1990s having huge computer with the dot system at the time. And then you're already transitioning into the beginning of internet and web browsers.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the thinking and the mindset at the time, the bulletin board companies, what's their attitude towards this new technology?
Yeah, so I actually started working for a little company called Business Information Network, and it was a bulletin board company. And the company was building bulletin boards for government agencies and for a few associations. Everything was custom. I remember we were using C++ and Clipper. Clipper, I don't think even exists anymore, to create the front end for these systems, and everything was dial-up. So the pages, the designs, and everything was being painted on by modem. And if you were there at the AWTC award ceremony, they actually started the whole discussion about the Badass Awards with the sound of a modem. And Gretchen said, do you remember what that sound is? I remember taking tech support calls from people saying, I can't get connected. And I would say, let's go to your settings, read me your modem string, remove this ampersand.
Wow.
It was always pretty crazy. Back then, all these bulletin boards were kind of the prominent thing. There was CompuServe, there was Prodigy, there was AOL, and then there were these internet service providers. And I remember I had a Netcom account, and I don't think Netcom exists anymore. It was an internet service provider. And you used like some open source browser or the Netcom browser to access the internet. Back then, it was mostly text, a little bit of graphics, and we didn't quite know what to do with it. And we were getting RFPs for bulletin boards from associations. In 1994, we got an RFP from a healthcare association, and we sat around and we said, let's pitch it as a website. And the association came back and said, wow, we love this idea of creating a website instead of a bulletin board. We're going to reissue the RFP and request a website. And so we said, okay, and wouldn't you know it, we didn't get the account.
Wow.
We were the ones who pitched the website, but we didn't get the account. But that's life, right? If you're in the business of selling, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, and sometimes you're a trailblazer and sometimes it doesn't work out. But anyway, it kind of ushered in the start of really what ended up becoming a pretty significant career for me. Back then, the websites were really pretty simple. They were kind of brochure websites. But each time it was a conversation with my development team and with my design team about what's possible. So I remember the first time we had a members only section, we were like, wow, just like in the bulletin boards, we could limit access. I remember the first time we could do video. That was just amazing because when you're on dial-up, you can't really do video, at least not very well, but all of a sudden you could because the speeds were better or because the streaming services came out. It was just kind of an interesting time. It was the go-go days, and I remember leading up to the crash in the early 2000s, it was just crazy how much energy there was and how much innovation was really in the space. And then after the crash, there was another wave of innovation, and then there's another wave of innovation. So I tell my team, that every 3 to 4 years, we have to reinvent the company. And it is hard to do that. And you have to be intentional about it because when things are good, there's no push to reinvent the company. So you have to decide to do it so that you stay relevant, so that you stay ahead of your clients.
I want to unpack this a little bit more, especially the thinking process behind this. I'm seeing the pattern, like you say, a new wave happening, a new things being introduced, and then there will be a wave of the followers and the adapter to it. I'm referring to things like AI or large language model at the moment.
Right.
Seeing it as a patterns of wave. When that particular client asks you to build a bulletin and you decided to pitch them with a website instead, what was the thinking process in there that prompts you to introduce something else to them?
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting question. Sometimes you read an RFPV and you say, what are they really trying to do, right? They might say they need a content management system, but what they're really looking for is a new strategy for increasing membership. And in that case, the CMS becomes a tool, not the goal, if that makes sense. Like the RFP says, hey, we want a new content management system, but that should never be the goal, right? The goal should be something related to the mission of the organization. We want a new content management system because we need a new website that's going to help us be flexible, that's going to allow us to better serve our members so that we can grow, so that we can generate revenue, so that we can increase members. So I think sometimes when we read an RFP, we think, is that really what you want? And it's risky for sure, right? Sometimes it pays off and sometimes it doesn't because they'll say, Matrix, what the hell are you thinking? You're not being responsive to the RFP, but that's kind of our style. I think that we like to go deep and sometimes we'll pitch something completely different. Or what we'll do, is we'll pitch exactly what they want. And then at the end of the proposal, we'll say, hey, by the way, we've got some other ideas. Obviously, they're going to be optional elements, but we spent some time thinking about your project and here's some additional ideas. Sometimes clients will say, what are you thinking? We didn't ask for that. And sometimes they'll say, oh, how interesting that you took our requirements and came up with some additional ideas. Let's do them. Or sometimes they'll say, not this year.
What I'm learning from this segment so far is as a consultant in this sort of relationship, not only you try to respond to their need, you also want to find way to add values to what they are looking for. And I'm also hearing some sort of business analytics thinking in there to try to pull out the end goals of whatever they are trying to build.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, any project that you do, you have to understand why they're doing it. It's never about the technical requirements, right? Because otherwise you're spending way too much money to just fulfill the technical requirements. And I think part of that is you also have to kind of take into consideration the context, You have to take into consideration maybe the size and the budget of the organization and the tolerance of the organization for maybe some thinking that's outside of the RFP. I have a couple of clients that have said, Joanna, we don't want you in our meetings because you're crazy. And then I have other clients that say, please come to as many meetings as you are able to and just tell us some crazy stuff that you're seeing out there or that you're thinking about. And we'll probably do none of them or maybe do one or two of them, but we want to hear them.
Using your own vocabulary, crazy ideas, can you share with me one of the most crazy ideas you've ever shared with your clients?
Let's see. One of the things that came out of the pandemic that actually isn't prominent anymore, but at the start of the pandemic, when organizations were kind of thinking, what are we going to do with virtual? There were already virtual platforms, but I sat down with my team and I said, I think this is going to be bad. Let's do something really different. And we ended up building a virtual meeting platform that was very different from the other systems because it had beautiful streaming with the ability to customize, but we also had our own video rooms that could be customized that had different flavors. So here's an example. We had clients that said, how are we going to do trade shows? We said, it's not going to work to do trade shows the way you think you're going to do trade shows, where you have a bunch of pages devoted to your exhibitors and you're going to hope that the attendees are going to go there. They're not going to go there. They're there for the education. They're not going to go into these pages. So we said, how can we integrate them into the main stage? But also, how can we create video rooms that maybe have some branding? So we're in Zoom right now, and Zoom is black with a little Zoom logo. And one of the things that we were able to do was if you're Coke and you're holding a meeting in your own private room, it's red with a Coke logo in the background. So that even in the video rooms, you've got some branding for the companies. And, what we ended up doing with those clients is we said, let's explode the thinking of how these meetings can take place. How do we figure out how to make them very engaging? And we said, let's figure out how to create different types of video rooms. So in our product, we have what we call the standard video room where people can be on video. We have what we call morning coffee where people get matched randomly with people and then it ends and then they go to the next one. We have different rooms that can be branded. The point is we have different ways of thinking about interactions within a conference and then how do you create something that's unique and special for each conference. So that's one example. Another thing that we're thinking about right now, V, is how do you explode journals? Mm-hmm. Journals haven't changed in 100 years. We put them online. Instead of one PDF, we kind of split up the articles and we categorize them, but they haven't changed. So we're thinking really hard about how do you explode journals? And I've got a couple of clients that we're in conversation with. How do we create something really immersive that's almost its own experience that takes into account AI, video, multimedia, micro-learning, and the fact that people won't sit down anymore and kind of read a journal cover to cover. And I'm thinking about Netflix. There's so many different ways that we consume Netflix. There are shows that drop all at once and you binge watch. And then there are other shows that drip every week. There's some shows that drip 2 at a time. There's some shows that drip 4 at a time. And then Netflix has this really amazing algorithm that almost seems to tailor itself to you. I think the whole universe knows that I'm a big fan of Korean dramas. And so my swim lanes have all kinds of Korean drama, and nobody else is going to have these swim lanes. Mine are like Korean dramas where rich people have gone bad. Who comes up with these categories? And then there's another one called award-winning historical dramas or like swoon-worthy romance dramas. I'm sure mine are really different from yours, and it feels very tailored to me. So how do we create that kind of experience that feels very intimate to ignite amazing loyalty? Because I'm telling you, Netflix raised its prices like a couple dollars. My husband said, hey, they raised their price. And I went, and?
Well, talking about loyalty.
Right? Exactly. So I was like, I don't care. It's $2. I mean, the way I consume it and the way it seems to really know me has engendered, at least in me, such great loyalty. Not to mention the fact that they're just, amazing shows that they're putting out, including Netflix produced shows. And think about this. Netflix is a membership. They call you a member, right? They don't call you a subscriber or a customer. They call you a member. So anyway, those are some of the things that we're thinking about.
And just to amplify the message about how Netflix personalize our own experience in the landing page, I'm a big Korean drama fan as well, but mine is more towards science fictions and ancient dramas.
Ah,
Yes, you are right. The swim lane's completely different. And the other thing I'm fascinating about Netflix is the community around it. The company didn't have to do much, but the fans
yeah.
create their own community and they discussing things that they enjoy about particular dramas. They have a very strong sense of community because they're using the same service.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a wiki that has whole subsections devoted to each drama. I don't know if you've found that one.
yes,
So when I was watching Kingdom, there was a whole wiki about Kingdom. So if I was curious about who is this character and how's he related to the king, I could look in the wiki and then imagine all the Reddit threads, right, about the different shows. And that's just not for Korean dramas, that's for everything, basically, right?
yeah. Throughout the conversation so far, what I'm hearing is you somehow be able to see the multiple possibility when you're looking at a piece of information. Can you also share with me the thought process, as in from the time that you look at the piece of information, like a request for quote, to the point that you could imagine the multiple possibility, and then from there you pick out the preferred options?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, this is not a Joanna thing. This is a Matrix thing. And this is where the team really creates the magic. If we get an RFP, for example, we will assemble a team that includes a designer, an analytics person, a developer, and a front-end dev. And we'll huddle. We'll basically start with a Slack discussion and we'll say, okay, we've got this RFP, it's due, whenever. And so what we do is we start the discussion in Slack. Especially for my devs, they like to kind of think about things and then have a meeting. And I think it makes the meetings much more meaningful because I'm not just saying, hey, what do you think about this? And then asking them to be like brilliant on the spot. Like, who's brilliant on the spot? Nobody is, right? You need time to really think about this. And then we'll have a couple of meaningful discussions. And usually the first meeting will be like, okay, so what are the requirements? Can we do this? Is this in our wheelhouse? Is this a good fit for us? And sometimes it's not. And then kind of the solutions team says, this isn't a good fit. But if we think that there's a good fit and maybe there's an opportunity for us to kind of insert some creative thinking, then we'll have another meeting and even a subsequent meeting, or the person who's leading the RFP process will say, do we have any kind of crazy ideas that are inspired by this RFP? And we'll literally just spitball and try to come up with ideas. And then it's up to the solutions team to kind of wrangle the ideas and say, okay, is that really possible? How would we make it happen? And then how do we price it? And one thing that I tell my team, when people say, oh, I'm worried about change and I'm worried about new things, well, it cannot happen in an agency. Because what I tell my team is on any given day, because we're a custom development shop, we are pitching things that we've not done before. Hopefully it's not so out of our wheelhouse that it's risky for the organization, but on any given day, that particular configuration of technology and design is not something that we've done for somebody else. And so you have to approach each project with kind of a fresh mind, with curiosity and a creative mind, so that you're giving them something very different. So I tell my team when they're like, we haven't done that before, I'll say, yeah, I know, but we hadn't done that before and that went well, and we hadn't done that before. So we have this expression, make it up, make it happen.
It sounds really exciting,
It is.
but how can you balance the reality with the excitements when at the end of the day you still have to deliver something? If the team having doubt about the possibility to deliver the product, how can you consult them so that they trust the vision moving forward?
Yeah. So just because we haven't done it before, it doesn't mean it's risky.
Okay.
So for example, the first time we did a WordPress integration with Nimble, we hadn't done that before, but we do lots of WordPress and we do lots of Nimble. So even though we haven't done that configuration, it's not risky. So every once in a while, you will do something that is very different and risky. So the very first virtual meeting that we did, we won the RFP, but we had a lot of development to do. And so in that situation, I don't pitch it without full agreement from the team. If anybody on the team says, I don't think we can do it, we either don't pitch it or we try to get to where they can say, yes, we can do this. And I will tell you a story. During the pandemic, when we were trying to decide whether or not to pitch or respond to a particular RFP, it was challenging. It was new tech. We hadn't done it before. And I was really interested in it, but this was not a decision that Joanna was going to make on her own. So we had a meeting, and one of the senior developers actually said, Joanna, I'd like you to leave the meeting because we need to discuss this to see if we can do it and if we're confident. And I said, if you guys say we can't do it, we won't bid because it's too risky for us and too risky for the client. I don't want to do that to the client. So they deliberated for 45 minutes without me. And then I got the Slack message, Joanna, come back in. And the senior dev said, we're in. Failure is not an option. We are going to make this happen. And when you have that kind of commitment and attitude from your team, it's going to happen.
Wow. Okay.
They will go through fire, but they will make it happen because they made a commitment. It's amazing. But you have to also not bid on things when they say we can't do it. And I'll push. I'll say, are you sure? This is another Joanna thing. They'll say, oh, it's going to be hard. And I'll say, okay, are there circumstances under which this can be done? And if they say, oh, well, yeah, sure, if you do this and this, then I know it's possible. But there are constraints. But if they say, no, there are no circumstances, I don't care how much time and how much money and how many dev resources you give me, we can't do this, then I won't bid.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Can we go back to that 45 minutes durations?
Yeah.
Duration without you?
Yeah.
As a CEO, as a leader of the organization at that point, when you know that your team's talking about a very important things without you in there, what were your emotions? What were you feeling at the time?
So, at the time I thought, this is hard. This is going to be really hard work, and you have to trust the team. So they kicked me out, and I thought, I guess that's the right thing to do. And he actually said, I want the team to be very, very honest, and they may not if you're in the room. And I totally respect that. So what do? You say, all right, well, I'm going to go make a cup of coffee, and I'm going to go check my email. Because probably this is a talent of mine. When there's nothing I can do about something, I stop worrying. It's hard, and sometimes I do, but often I'll say, there's nothing I can do about this right now, and worrying about it is only going to make me sick, or it's going to make me unproductive in other areas. And at that point, nothing could happen until they made the decision. So at that point, you say, okay, there's nothing I can do at this point, so I'm going to go do something else.
Wow.
This is something I have cultivated because on any given day, V, there's a lot of things pulling your attention, right? Worrying about things that you cannot change. So, okay, my son is in Japan right now. He is with grandpa, he is with family, he has a phone, he has a credit card, he has money. And, are you thinking about him? Are you worried about him? I'm like, no. Well, sort of, but I can't think about it. There's nothing I can do. And sitting thinking about him does nothing. So let him enjoy it. I have a mom who's very frail, and I help my sister out, and I go and help. But most days, there's nothing I can do. Worrying about it only makes me less effective when I am needed to help. So
Okay.
it's a talent. This is something that I think a lot of people should develop because they'll say, I'm worried. And I'll say, I know, but there's nothing you can do. So stop worrying. And they'll say, but don't you care? And I'll say, oh, hell yes, of course I care. But there's nothing I can do. So I might as well do something else.
Okay. I feel like we need another separate episode. Practice of not worrying. This is cool. Thank you for that. I want to bring the conversation back to you, the person behind the title. At the very beginning of the conversations, you introduce yourself as a daughter, sister, mother, martial artist, and CEO. Across all of those roles, is there one that you love the most, that you hold closest to your heart?
Oh, it probably has to be mom,
Mhm.
right? I mean, I love being a mom. It's hard some days, but I love being a mom. My husband and I really have enjoyed being parents together. we're largely on the same page about how to raise the boys. And now that they're older, we travel with them and we have conversations with them. We talk to them at dinner. They talk back to us. They send us texts and they send us stuff to read. It's just really interesting to see the interesting, wonderful, curious people that they're becoming. I love it.
Nice. Is there a practice that you guys do on a regular basis as a family?
So I'll tell you something that the Boy Scouts actually helped us with. So my oldest son is an Eagle Scout. My younger son's also a Scout. And there's a merit badge called Family Life that is Eagle required. So everybody has to go through Family Life. I guess if you don't want to be an Eagle, you don't have to do it. One of the requirements for Family Life is that you have to hold a family meeting every week for 3 months. And so my older son said, Mom, I have to do this. And I said, okay, when do you want to do it? So we do it on Sundays at 7. That was 8 years ago, and we're still doing it.
Wow.
So every Sunday at 7, we have family meeting, and we sort of like check in, but two important things happen at family meeting. We go over the schedule for the week. So we know who's getting picked up. We know, like, Mom's got an event. When's MJ going climbing? When's Mom going to class? Whatever. But the other thing is there's time at the end of the meeting to discuss issues or anything that somebody wants to talk about. So my older son might say, well, he's in college, so when he was younger, he might say, Mom, there's a concert that I really want to go to. And I remember when he wanted to go to this tournament in Texas. And he said, oh, there's this thing I want to go to, but I know you'll say no. And I said, well, this is family meeting time. This is a time for you to talk about it. We still might say no, but talk about it. It was a Rocket League tournament that he wanted to go to in Texas, and it was a whole week. And he said, there's this Rocket League tournament. And the other thing that I think is good about our family is we're curious. So my husband's like, well, tell me about the tournament. Why is this important to you? And then I was like, well, why do you want to go? How much is it? How hard is it to get tickets, etc.? And my husband said, oh, well, maybe I'll go with you and I'll just work from there and it'll be like a daddy-son trip. And so they did. They went. And I think my son was amazed because he didn't think it was possible. But because we have kind of the mechanism of the family meeting to bring up anything that you might want to talk about, it means that maybe something that you didn't think was possible ended up being possible after all. And I think that has actually been really great in our family. And so now with our trips, for example, again, during family meeting, we'll discuss it and I'll say, okay, I have a Google Doc. I'm going to write down what Mom wants to do. Why don't you guys write down what you want to do? Because if you don't, we end up doing the things that Mom wants to do. And they know that if they put in the things that they want to do, chances are we'll do them as well. Because the trip isn't just about Joanna, it's about the whole family. So when we went to London, my older son said, Mom, there's this rapper who died, who I love, and there's this bench. And it's kind of in a weird part of London. Do you think there's time during the trip for us to go visit this bench? Of course, we're going to make time to go visit this bench. It required a metro ride and a bus ride and a walk to see a bench. But it was so important to him. And of course, the younger son was like, oh, this is really great. So I think the family meeting has been a practice that has kind of knit us together. And I'll tell you the other thing, V, we do a family trip once a year. And I think that knits us together for the rest of the year. Because like my boys, for example, they might argue, but somehow we go on that trip and they don't argue. They're buddies during that trip. And it means they're buddies for most of the rest of the year. And then by the time they start fighting again, we go on a trip.
That is so cool. You reminded me of when I was growing up. My dad also put us on road trip
Yeah.
every school summer. And I mean, we were even before becoming teenagers. That's the stage when we just sleep and eat and
Right.
do
Don't
more.
talk to your parents.
Yeah, so we have no idea why do we have to do this? Why do I have to spend family time when it's summer? I could have spent it with friends outside of school. But now in retrospect, you're right, that's really pulling us together. Me and my sister has the best sisterhood time together and we're very close.
And you probably have stories and jokes about those trips that
Yeah.
are part of the family culture and legends.
Yes. Yes.
right? And so that's what makes you you is all of these shared experiences. Yeah, totally. So my 14-year-old who, most days doesn't really want to talk to me, we try. And I have to give him more credit. He's actually really great. But he loves these trips. And a huge part of it I know is because he gets to spend time with his brother.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, there is a keyword that I'm hearing a couple of times in your stories and conversations so far. That is curiosity. And I know that it is a word that you like to unpack with us as well. Can you give us a bit of a context of why this word and the importance and how it's impact your way of being?
Yeah, I don't really know where it comes from, and I don't really know when it became a thing. But at some point in the history of the company, we decided to write down our company values, and we call them the company fundamentals. And they're not single words, they're sentences. And one of the company fundamentals at Matrix Group is we are curious. And it turns out that that's a really important thing to do, but you can't just pay lip service to it. You have to actually mean it when you say we are curious. And so on a regular basis, we'll say, hey, let's get curious about that. And somebody will say, what does that look like? Which is an interesting question, right? What does that curiosity look like? And then somebody will say, well, I think this is how I need to kind of go deep with this project. And somebody else will say, I think this is what I will do. And then somebody else will say, well, I could spend a whole week doing that. And then somebody will say, oh, no, God, I don't need you to spend all that time. Please don't. We don't have that kind of time. But curiosity, I think, has become something of a really important cultural trait at the company because clients love it because we're curious about them. And when you're curious about someone, you go deep, you get to know them. And it's an honor, right? Because somebody knows you that deeply or a company knows you that deeply. And then I think for me, because I do fancy myself a lifelong learner and a traveler, I love to travel, I think curiosity fuels that, but also satisfies it, right? Because I go on these trips, I'm curious, and then it kind of satisfies my curiosity, but leaves me wanting more. I just think it's a great way to live.
Can you unpack that a little bit more? I know that you are planning for a trip soon. So, how does curiosity play in the planning part of it?
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good question. So we're going to Japan in a couple of weeks. And so what happens is there's a family meeting, right? Where we made the decision to go to Japan. And this time we're not all together because the spring breaks of my sons are on different weeks. So my son is actually there right now with his grandfather. And then we will be there 2 weeks later with grandfather. But the way it starts is we'll talk about, where do we want to go? And then when we make the decision, mom starts the Google Doc. And then everybody does their own research about what they might be interested in doing. And we throw it all into the Google Doc. But the other thing that we did is we bought a couple books about Japan and a dinner. I'll pull out a random passage, or my younger son will say, hey, I learned something about Japan. Or I'll say, hey, there's this really interesting thing. Or my husband will say, hey, there's something I want to talk about. So it comes out that way. It's just conversation and then kind of each family member doing their own research and then sharing what they're learning. So, for example, for your listeners who don't know this, gift giving in Japan is a gigantic deal. I mean, gigantic, as in the care that goes into the picking of the gift and the wrapping of the gift and the presentation of the gift. And I'll tell you, it is not quite this serious in the Philippines, but it is apparently a gigantic deal. And I didn't know just how much it was. And so obviously being married to a half Japanese man, you get curious about this stuff. One, because you want to do the right thing, but also because it's so different from my own reality. So I'm curious about it. And then we have lots of conversations about it. And he says, Joanna, you don't have to be so stressed about it because you're gaijin, right? And so he says, you'll get away with a lot of stuff by being gaijin. And he said, you should use that gaijin card. And so I said, okay, but over the past few weeks, we've been collecting things to give them. I mean, everything's available in Japan. So the question is, what could we get them that maybe is less available in Japan so that it becomes a meaningful gift? And I'll tell you, what I have come up with is White House Christmas ornaments.
Yes.
Because they're so quintessentially DC and they're beautiful and they're small. So, and then Now I got to figure out how to wrap them really nicely.
Yes, yes, there is an entire art around gift wrapping in Japan. My mom's really into that sort of hands-on experience, making pretty things. And I remember growing up, she bought us a whole heaps of different books on origamis and how to integrate origamis into gift wrapping.
Oh,
Yes, there is an entire art around that. And
I
even
don't even know about that. Okay.
the selections of the gift wrapping material, they also say there are a lot of meanings around that, like what material do you choose for which audience? This is fascinating.
Well, V, I have a funny story for you. So, my very first trip to Japan, Maki and I had just gotten married, and we're out shopping with his grandmother, and she took us to this craft store, local Japanese crafts, and I wanted to buy the beckoning cat. So, this is the manikineko. So, if you go to a Japanese restaurant, you'll see a cat waving its left paw, right? It's a beckoning cat, and the cat is saying, "Come in" to the customers. That's what it's doing. So anyway, so I wanted to get some cats for the people at the office. Everybody got a cat. But then I opened up one of the drawers and there's beautiful paper. And one of them has a kabuki scene and the other one has a beautiful red and gold scene of a boy and girl on a platform for Children's Day. The kabuki scene is purple and gold, and of course I'm going to buy it because it's purple. So I buy this and I bring it home and I want to frame it. And my husband says, "Why are you framing wrapping paper?" So I said, "Because it's so beautiful. How can this be wrapping paper?" And he says, "Oh, no, you're not framing that." And I said, "Oh, yes, I am." And so for a long time, he would sniff at it and say, "Oh, can't believe you framed wrapping paper." But he's over it.
That is so cool.
This wrapping paper V is so gorgeous.
I know, and they pay a lot of attention to the details on the wrapping paper. Right. Now, have you seen in your experience any downside of curiosity? Because there's that famous proverb, curiosity killed a cat.
Yeah.
Have you seen that happen?
Yes. I'll tell you a great story. So there is a book called Strengths Finder,
Mhm.
and I'm in a CEO group, and we all took the little test. And one of my strengths is input. So input people like to gather data. And it's because I'm curious, I'm constantly asking for data. And I did not realize this until somebody told me. She said, "This is the downside of being curious, of input people. Some people will interpret it as micromanaging because I want to know all the details." And so, and gosh, I had this realization, oh my God, I've been doing this to my staff. They think I'm micromanaging. So I remember a conversation with one of the IT people where we're putting in the VPN and I'm asking him all these questions. And you could see his eyes just go wider and wider. He couldn't give me the answers to all the things that I was asking. He basically backed out of my office and said, "Let me go get somebody else who can answer these questions." And I said, "Oh no, it's okay. I don't need the answers. I was just curious." And he was like, "No, no, I'll be back." And I remember afterwards talking with the presenter, and she said, "Yeah, he was probably overwhelmed by your curiosity. And also, now he's thinking you're questioning the decisions that the IT team has made." But I wasn't. I was just curious. So now, V, when new people start at Matrix, several times in their first 90 days, I'll say, "Okay, there's something that you need to know about me." I'm input. I ask lots of questions. Sometimes it's because I do really want to get into the details because I want to make sure that the strategy or whatever is right. But there are other times when I just want to know out of curiosity. So now I'll say, "I'm going to ask you a lot of questions only because I'm curious, not because I'm questioning the choices you made." So that's been the downside. And I think that when I say that, you can see people go,
Mm,
right? Like she's not questioning what we're doing because I can be really intense when asking questions.
right. Can we go back to that 45 minutes moment when your team was in that deliberation without you?
Yeah.
Then you say you try
I'm
not,
trying not to think about it. Yeah.
but didn't you want to know all the details that are going on in that meeting?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I'll give you the context of why I'm asking this reconciliation point. I'm interested in your thought process during that pockets of 45 minutes. How did you coach yourself so that you are not worrying when at the same time You're the type of person who wants to know every detail. How did you calm yourself
Yeah.
down?
Yeah, so one thing that I do in that situation, and I think I did this at that time, was I basically said, if they come back and say, yes, we're going to do this, then how do I win this? So now I'm busy because I'm working on the strategy. But the
Gotcha.
other thing was, if they say no, how do I tell the client that we're not bidding? Because that's also potentially important and risky. So that's enough to keep you occupied. Is it curiosity? I don't know, but it's basically what's the next step, regardless of what the outcome is.
Okay.
The other thing is, and I think maybe this is where part of the analytical aspect of this is, there could have been lots and lots of outcomes. Yes, we can do this. Yes, we think we can do this, but we're not sure. No, we don't think we can do this. No, we don't think we can do this unless you do this. So there's lots of different outcomes to this, and you just have to think of all those possibilities.
Nice. As you share your thought process, I learned that by embracing curiosity, you then be able to provide these possibilities. So in a way, possibility in your story is the byproduct of your curiosity.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a very good insight.
Mm. Just quickly on the thinking process. So if we want to train our curiosity muscles, what do you suggest, the top three things that we need to do?
Oh, that's a good question. One thing is to really try to create a culture in your meetings where people don't judge too fast. Because what'll happen is people will say, well, I have an idea, and somebody will immediately say, oh, but. And I'm like, wait. And so it's training for myself and for my managers to not judge too fast and to not allow interruptions. Because people are like waiting to just say the next thing, right? And I'll say, hang on, just let them finish, give them the time. That's number one. Number two is I am famous for saying, well, V, we haven't heard from you. What do you think about this? And I'll say, it's okay if you need more time or if you are not ready, but I would like to hear from you, is what I say. The third thing is, have you heard of the 7 thinking hats? So we found something really funny on the internet. It was the 7 thinking cats. And there's like a picture of a cat assigned to each color. And so what we did is we mapped the people in the company to the different colors.
Oh,
So
wow.
like who's the black cat, who's the red, who's the green, who's the blue, who's the yellow. And so what I do is try to represent different types of cats in the meeting. And we'll actually say, I need a black hat thinker in here. Because that person is going to find all the different ways that this could fail, that this could be risky. And it's hard sometimes because black hat thinkers are really downers sometimes, but you need them, right? And then I'll say, you know what, I need a white hat thinker to come up with all the analytics, or I need someone who's yellow. So that's one thing that we do to try and represent different types of thinking. And then what you have to do is you have to really be open to the different types of thinking, because sometimes it's hard when someone is all black and they're dominating the conversation and it feels like they're really kind of not open to the possibilities, but you invited them there for a reason. So you need to give them the time and space, and then you need to say, fantastic, thank you for that. I want to hear something else. I'll tell you one thing that I would say is really good facilitation of meetings is probably a skill to develop at your company, because that will get you far.
Thank you for that. Wow. Okay. I have something to practice from today.
Well, so what we did, V, and of course now we're not in person, but we had the 6 thinking cats. We had it printed out and it was on a little like plastic stand, and it was in every conference room
Nice.
as kind of a visual reminder to represent the different types of thinking in every meeting. And some meetings are, you don't need all that analysis. But other meetings where we're like, oh God, we're just stumped here, or this is a potential new opportunity. What are we not thinking of? And then you also have to be really comfortable with the silence, right? And I will actually say, okay, everybody be quiet for 3 minutes so that we can all think. Because there are some people who need quiet to think. And if everyone's just talking, now you've drowned out their thinking and then you never hear from them.
Well, two things I love here. As a more quieter person in a meeting, I'm so appreciative when the chair of those meetings invite me to speak. Then I love the idea of printing out those cards of different cats. Not only is a good reminders for the facilitator, but as a person contributing to the meetings, you help me to realize the strengths that I have to contribute to conversations and the values I can add.
Oh, 100%.
So that's a really, really cool practice. Thank you for sharing that. We're getting close to the end of the episode. Is there any good stories around the outcomes of curiosity that you can share with us?
Oh my God, so many. One thing that I'll say is we've been in business 25 years, V, and you can't really last without curiosity because you have to be curious to take you to the next stage where you want to be. You have to be curious about what's really happening with your staff, about where your clients are, about what's around the corner as a trend. And you have to be curious about the trends that maybe will affect your clients that you don't even think about. And I will give you an example. So you know that I have a podcast, Associations Thrive, and I interview associations. And I try to go into those interviews like you with an open mind. I never know where the interviews are going to take me. And something kept popping up, and that was governance. And so my team says to me on a regular basis, Joanna, what are the themes bubbling up from the podcast from the last quarter? And they listen to them, but it's useful to kind of step back and say, what are we learning? What are some big themes? And a big theme that cuts across all the episodes is governance. And as a tech company, we didn't know that much about governance. So I said, wow, this is not something that we touch. We should get curious about it. And so then the question is, how do you get curious about governance, right? And we didn't really know, but I said, you know what? I think more of us need to serve on committees and boards of other associations so that we all have experience. I mean, I do, but I had some staff that didn't. And I said, I think you guys need that experience. But also I said, hey, the next time we have meetings with clients, let's ask them about certain things and let's get curious about it. So clients will never say to you, oh, by the way, we're redoing our governance and adding new member types. But now we ask because, I don't know, is it relevant to what we're doing? Maybe, maybe not. But you never know when something will be relevant or just make you more valuable as a partner. So that's just been a really, really great outcome from all this curiosity.
It is so cool. Governance is a topic that's very close to my heart.
Ah,
And
governance geek.
well, I don't know everything under the sun, but I'm very passionate about that as an area of practice. And what I've learned so far within the domain of governance is that it is about having different people in the room,
Yes.
different responsibility to make sure that the final decisions making is sound and safe. So it is awesome that you guys bringing that thought process into your conversation because you are right. What I'm finding missing when working on a tech project is always that business analyst and translation of policy into technology process and automations. And most often, all of those policy coming out from the constitutions and bylaw and the committees.
Right.
And that in itself is governance. So if you can crack that code and embed that into your conversations, wow, that would be very, very powerful for you guys.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. I'm not sure that we're succeeding, but I think there's at least an understanding within the company that governance really powers an organization and it infuses so much of what they do because it's how they make decisions. It's who gets to make a decision. It's who gets to have a voice,
Yeah.
right? And it's about the focus. And so, like one of our clients, they just released a new strategic plan, and the new strategic plan is just earth-shatteringly different. Okay. But you don't tell your tech vendor, hey, we have a new strategic plan and we've got a new focus, but we actually really need to know or should know. And so when I had the CEO on the podcast, I went, oh my God, everybody working on this project needs to know. And so what it's done is it's really kind of encouraged us to be a whole lot more curious about things maybe outside of our domain. So when that episode actually dropped, I sent it to everybody practically at the company. And I said, hey, you guys got to listen to this, but especially if you're working on this account, you need to listen to this. And then at your next team meeting for the big projects, I said, I want you guys to talk about what this could mean for our work and where could we kind of insert this new knowledge into our work. It doesn't always mean new work. It just means that we have a different insight and context for the work. But also, to your point, it allows us to ask different questions. So if they say, for example, hey, we're going to add a new member type. We're a medical association and we used to only allow doctors, but now we allow PhDs and nurses. Well, this is pretty important. So like we might ask the question, okay, so how's that going to affect SSO? Are you going to have different permissions based on the member type? Is there a personalization component to this based on the member type? Because you might have different interests based on whether you're a doctor or a nurse. Just knowing that allows us to ask those questions. We can be proactive. But I also think, V, that it gives context to the work and makes the work more meaningful. And ultimately, it's what floats your boat, right? The feeling that the work that you did for this association helped it to change the world in some way. And that's really pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. That's really cool. And it sounds like almost a privilege to be part of that conversation.
Oh, 100%.
Thank you so much. This is the best way to end the episode today. Thank you again for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation so far.
V, this has been very meaningful for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
And what a pleasure. I'm a big fan of your show. I always think, wow, V just manages in her soft way to pull out these insights from her guests. So thank you.
I appreciate that you're so open to all of the questions.
My name is Joanna Pineda, and you are listening to Humans of Authenticity, the CEO Special Edition.